welcome everyone. My name is Rebecca Slayton. I'm the director of the Judith Reppy Institute for Peace and Conflict Studies and an associate professor in the Department of Science and Technology Studies. Today's event I want to mention is co-sponsored by the Reppy Institute for Peace and Conflict Studies and also the Institute for European Studies. I'd like to start our event today with a brief land acknowledgement. Cornell University is located on the traditional homelands of the Guyacono, the Cayuga Nation. The Guyacono are members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, an alliance of 6 sovereign nations with a historic and contemporary presence on this land. The Confederacy precedes the establishment of Cornell University, New York State, and the United States of America. We acknowledge the painful history of Guyacono dispossession and honor the ongoing connection of Guyacono people, past and present, to these lands and waters. Now, I'm delighted to introduce our speaker for today. Emma D'Souza is a journalist, award-winning campaigner, peace builder, and civic innovation specialist. She is the founder and co-facilitator of Northern Ireland's Civic Initiative, director of the Northern Ireland Emerging Leaders Program with the National Committee on American Foreign Policy, and a consultant on peace processes and civic innovation. In 2020, D'Souza successfully delivered substantial changes to United Kingdom immigration law after a 5-year court case to make the law consistent with its commitments to the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. And there's much more I could say, but I would rather hear from her. So please join me in welcoming Emma.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today, and I loved your discussion and all your questions. So ready to answer all those questions when I finish this presentation, which I promise will not be too long. I want to speak to you today about the power of civic engagement in peace processes and peace building. I'm conscious that we are currently living through both the most peaceful and most dangerous period of history since the Second World War. The relative peace that we have experienced, or prosperity since the Cold War, is now giving way to an increase in conflict. And what we are seeing is a slippage in peace processes and peace agreements. I want to talk to you about civic engagement, exploring deliberative processes such as the national dialogue models, also looking at mass action and looking at alternative resolution tools, including the ideas of adaptive and positive peace. Professor Desiree Nelson of Uppsala University in Sweden has demonstrated that peace agreements are 64% less likely to fail when civil society is a part of the process. What can we learn about the inclusion of civic society in peace processes? And how might greater inclusion advance the pillars of positive peace? Civic society encompasses individuals, civil society organizations, the wider community, including faith groups, the business community. It's a vehicle for civic voice outside of the political institutions. As history has shown us, whether it's civil rights movement or it's the suffragettes, when civic society mobilizes, it can affect real change, often pressuring governments to take action, or in some cases, taking down governments. There are 3 core engagement spheres for civic society and peace building that I'm going to discuss here today, and that's mass protests, consultations and mediation, and peace monitoring and implementation. Okay. Mass protests have been proven to be effective. In the context of Northern Ireland, in 1976, 500,000 people mobilized under the Peace People to be able to take action around an end to violence. These rallies signified a shift in civic society and engaged wider society in being active proponents in the peace process. In the UK, anti-war movements had a significant impact, eventually leading to Tony Blair having to be taken out of office earlier than he would have liked. Launched in 2002, these protests actually had the largest demonstration in the history of the UK, with 1.5 million people on the streets in London. In 2006, 6 government aides resigned following an anti-war protest, calling on Blair to leave office within 12 months, and believe he did. We also know that mass protests were behind the decision to make a national dialogue in Colombia, led primarily by civic society. Nonviolent resistance is 10 times more likely to lead to democratization than violent resistance. Mass action is one of the most powerful advocacy tools citizens have. Successful mass actions have unified civic society, around shared causes, bringing together youth, women, communities, trade groups, faith groups, business sector, all to strengthen civic voice. Change happens, politicians all too often get a lot of the credit. But actually, the real drivers of change are people. And moments of significance across history have their origins not in a political party, but in a civic movement that pressurized political parties to act. So this remains one of the most powerful tools at our disposal. A further effective role for civic engagement in peace building is through consultation, mediation, and negotiation. If we look to example of Guatemala, where civic engagement played an essential role in leading to the peace accords, starting with the Grand National Dialogue in 1989, which included 47 delegates across the media, political parties, business community, faith groups. This was then followed by 5 dialogues with particular sectors, and then eventually led to the 1994 Assembly of Civic Society. By creating a civic society forum, communities were able to have a direct link to the peace negotiations. And whilst the government did not have to listen or take on the recommendations from the civil society forum, 80% of the proposals put forward by civic society engagement in Guatemala was formed and did go into the peace accords. In South Africa, it was the leadership of business and faith leaders who stepped in when the political process was beginning to slip that actually came forward and were mediators and independent facilitators. Civic society would go on to lead the National Peace Committee and implementation of the peace accords to great success. Peace process in South Africa demonstrates the potential in using both adaptive and positive peace approaches. Positive peace relating to taking forward and addressing the underlying causes of conflict, looking at socioeconomic rights, political stability, human capital, and respect for difference. Adaptive peace is about relating to engaging communities to directly impact around structured processes for sustaining peace. Both of these were evidenced in South Africa before they became global models for peace building. The launching of a national, regional, and local peace committee provided a forum for citizen dialogue, while rolling out training and facilitation, mediation, and conflict resolution provided people on the ground with the tools to participate in the peace process. The 1991 Peace Accord included specific commitments related to economic and community development, recognizing the damage of inequality to social cohesion. South Africa is also a great case study for looking at the role of the media and having a national campaign to engage wider society with their National Song for Peace, National Day for Peace, and all the elements that brought wider society along on that journey. The challenge is that the potential of including civic society in the political process is often cut short. The closure of the peace committees in South Africa limited the success of strengthening social cohesion. In Northern Ireland, civic society played a key role in delivering the 1998 peace process, leading the successful Yes campaign. In 1992, the Opsahl Commission started a citizen engagement inquiry with people on the ground and created a literal book that's about this size of submissions that you can have a hard time finding, but you might find a copy on eBay. In that, there were several proposals that actually made it into the Good Friday Agreement, even though it was then in 1992. The Northern Ireland Women's Coalition was a conduit between wider civic society and political parties and brought to the table a range of issues that would otherwise have been ignored. There is empirical data to support the importance of women in making and sustaining peace. An International Peace Institute study of 182 peace agreements signed between 1989 and 2011 found that when women are included in peace processes, there is a 35% increase in the probability that a peace agreement will last 15 years or more. Evidence suggests that women participants in peace processes are more likely to be focused on reconciliation, economic development, and transitional justice, all critical elements of a sustained peace. Northern Ireland's Women's Coalition brought forward proposals around shared education and housing, women's political participation, and a permanent structure for civic society to act as a consultative body on socioeconomic and cultural rights, all of which made it into the Friday Agreement. However, the Civic Forum was disbanded after only 2 years and has been dormant ever since, never reaching its true potential. We limit our peace when we limit the participation of civic society in actively delivering it. The Women's Coalition in Northern Ireland set a precedent with its inclusive process of cross-community dialogue and civic engagement, inspiring not just a new generation of peace builders in Northern Ireland, but the creation of UN Security Council Resolution 1325. The mass action from women of Liberia for peace also had a significant impact globally, shifting the perception of women in conflict as active members of peace processes and directly contributing to the end of the Liberian Civil War. The women's movement gained significant public support through demonstrations, monitored negotiations through a parallel process, and even went so far as to barricade negotiators into the building when it looked like the process was beginning to slip, forcing them to continue to have discussions. Today, they are still active in training and mediation and actively working around transitional justice. Thanks to the advocacy of women's groups in Colombia, the peace agreement includes 128 gender-specific measures, and implementation is monitored through gender indicators. 187 women were observers for the verification process of the ceasefire in Colombia, the largest ever on record. Women's participation and successful peace processes go hand in hand. The need for civic society to form a bridge between governments and wider society has not dissipated, but it has grown. The wave of advancements in technology has led to increased levels of misinformation, weakening trust in political institutions. This is further compounded by the emergence of artificial intelligence. AI technology has the potential to significantly disrupt democratic processes and artificially sway electoral outcomes to a degree never before seen. Beyond proliferating deceptive imagery, videos, and audio content, the technology is capable of eroding public trust in political processes and institutions. Recognizing the importance of strengthening civic engagement in political and peace processes, several countries have been advancing tools for participatory democracy. Participatory processes can take many forms, such as town halls, which I know are getting a bit of press coverage here in the US at the moment, participatory budgeting, forums, and assemblies. They decentralize power over policy design to the local level and increase citizen participation in decision-making. Evidence demonstrates this form of civic participation can lead to stronger decision-making, as well as having a positive impact on the social fabric. Citizen empowerment through deliberation can have an even greater outcome in post-conflict societies, breaking down barriers between communities and fostering greater cooperation. Examples of effective participation processes are evident in several successful peace processes, giving citizens a chance to reflect on their role in both the conflict and in peace. Today, countries such as France are launching a permanent citizens' assembly to recruit citizens via a postal lottery system. In Madrid, 49 citizens were randomly selected to form the observatory of the city to monitor municipal action. And in Ireland, the citizens' assembly model has proved to be very effective, often leading to constitutional change. I just had the pleasure of actually running a citizens' assembly in Northern Ireland, which brought together 84 citizens recruited via a public postal lottery system. They were asked to engage on the issue of housing. They might never have engaged on the issue of housing before, and many that came into that space had no idea what to expect. They were not experts on policy. They were recruited to be representative of society by age, gender, educational attainment, religious background, geographical spread, and whether or not they voted in the last election, to give you essentially a representative sample of society. They met over the course of 3 days, hearing from 18 experts, and engaged in roundtable facilitation and discussions, trying to find solutions to what is a very complex policy issue. And it was astounding to me to be in that space to see how quickly people formed a sense of determination for solutions, a responsibility to wider society and to each other, built community, broke down barriers, and came up with 38 policy recommendations ratified by a consensus vote of 80% plus. This shows the potential of citizens' assemblies as a model for building social cohesion, building public buy-in, building consensus, and being able to find perhaps new and innovative solutions to policy issues. They're a great space to kick complex issues to for politicians and have been proven to be effective in finding new pathways forward. Participatory democracy is about ensuring citizens are afforded the opportunity to be involved in decisions that impact their lives. It's not a competition with representative democracy, but rather it complements it. If we want to empower society to become active participants in advancing a positive peace, participatory democracy is central to doing that. Further area that civic society positively impacts is on peace monitoring. Peace agreements often fail or falter when they are poorly implemented. Where there has been success, there has often been a role for civic society in peace monitoring. In Liberia, the participation of civil society groups in areas such as human rights monitoring, improved implementation, and applied political pressure. While the UN has long had a role in peace monitoring, including monitoring the verification mission in Colombia. Third-party monitoring increases the likelihood of implementation, and through implementation, success. The Good Friday Agreement is considered a global model of a peace agreement, but the vast majority of its mechanisms and commitments to build social cohesion, improve equality, and deliver an effective peace dividend have never been realized. The agreement established a Human Rights Commission, but this commission was largely toothless in its ability to take action. The Civic Forum was disbanded after 2 years, taking away civic society's voice. Northern Ireland's peace process was not properly monitored externally, and despite a built-in review mechanism, it has never been properly reviewed in terms of its implementation and its effectiveness. In the studies that I've been showing here today, there are 4 key principles that effectively demonstrate the success of civic engagement in peace processes. One is to formulate functional objectives. We saw that in Liberia, where Women in Liberia's objective was force the political parties to bring forward a ceasefire, and they succeeded. Developing organizational strengths. We saw that in South Africa, where faith groups and business communities had already been working for years before they stepped forward, building up their organizational strength and a shared plan on how they were going to put themselves forward to mediate. Gaining critical access. We saw that in Northern Ireland, where the Women's Coalition saw an opportunity to be part of the negotiations. To be part of the negotiations, you had to actually run for election in Northern Ireland, and the 10 parties with the most votes would get a seat at the table for the negotiations. The Women's Coalition very quickly formed a political party, and they have some quite funny stories to share about how they pulled that together at short notice. Cultivating external assistance. This is a really important proponent. Global solidarity, working with multilateral organizations such as the UN and finding those who can support your movement, and also using the media as a tool as well. So how do we navigate an increasingly hostile world, and what tools are at our disposal? Women remain underrepresented in peace processes and in politics, but they are not underrepresented in civic society. Twin-pronged approach can be taken, increasing women's political participation through gender quotas, extending this to include a quota for peace processes, alongside creating more spaces for civic society to convene in the form of participatory processes, including citizens' assemblies or national dialogues. Participatory structures like citizens' assemblies are at their most effective when there is political buy-in. However, civic society, as we have just done in Northern Ireland, can just go ahead and do it ourselves as a way to pressure political parties to take forward these structures. The impact of these spaces goes beyond policy. They break down barriers between communities, and they create a shared purpose and build social cohesion. Voting should not be the only means of participating in political processes. And evidence demonstrates that many young people are forgoing voting in the form of other participation models, protests, community initiatives, and there's evidence that these processes do work. But low levels of trust in political institutions and a generational divide weakens our democracy. In the UK, young people came out in their thousands to protest against Brexit in the youth-led collective aptly titled Our Future, Our Choice. The Brexit referendum result was split between younger and older demographics. 71% of citizens under the age of 25 voted to remain in the European Union, while 64% of those aged 65 or over voted to leave. In Northern Ireland, there are worryingly low levels of faith in political parties and structures, perhaps not surprising given how often our political institutions collapse. A recent survey from the Northern Ireland Youth Forum showed that the majority of young people do not feel represented by any political party in Northern Ireland. 62% felt strongly that no political party cared about the views of young people. Civic society can bridge the difference between political institutions and wider society, but to do that, there has to be more done to bring young people to the table. I interviewed young people for the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, and I'm going to read you one quote from a young woman aged 19 called Lauren Bond. She said, "When reflecting on 25 years of peace, we're too scared to look back at the mistakes we made in the past, too scared to look forward to the future. So it's just come to a standstill, and my generation don't know where they stand in that." There is a need to depoliticize the role of civic society, not just in Northern Ireland, but in other places like maybe here in the US at the moment. And to do that, there needs to be more done to get our politicians to realize that civic engagement strengthens democracy and decision-making. We don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to reinvigorating peace processes. The key to success has been proven time and again. Behind every peace agreement is civic engagement and civic society. All of us form part of that. We face global challenges from economic crises to conflict, but what the examples I'm speaking about today teach us is that the power to effect change is within society, and it is achieved through collective action, through collaboration, and through community resilience. Civic engagement has the power to create a culture of peace and is central to building a durable and sustained peace. And in closing this short presentation, a personal reflection in terms of my own experience. So I am what Monica McWilliams, who is one of the founders of the Women's Coalition, would call an accidental activist. I did not ever intend or envision a world where I would be taking forward a court case against the UK government. But that's where I found myself, and the court case that I took forward spanned half a decade, 5 years of my life, and required having to step into the public space in a post-conflict society where sectarianism and misogyny still remain very prevalent issues. During those 5 years, many people told me that what I was doing was not going to be able to change anything. And yet, at the end of those 5 years, the UK government changed UK immigration law, and that had a significant effect across Northern Ireland, bringing forward changes that reaffirmed the identity and citizenship provisions of the Good Friday Agreement. So the lesson in that I want to share is that each and every one of us does have the ability to affect change. And that no matter how big the opponent is, if you work collectively together with those in your community, you can do something about it. And with that, I'm going to open up to questions.